Are you someone who needs complete silence? Psychology explains you're sitting at your desk trying to focus, and somewhere in the background, someone's humming. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's a family member in the next room. It's not loud. It's not aggressive. It's just there, there. And yet, your entire nervous system feels like it's being slowly dragged across a chalkboard. Your thoughts scatter. Your focus evaporates. You feel this low-grade irritation rising in your chest, and you can't help but think, am I the only person on Earth who can't function unless it's dead silence? If that sounds painfully familiar, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. There's actually a fascinating psychological and neurological explanation for why some people need complete silence to think, work, or simply exist in peace, while others seem perfectly fine with noise swirling around them like it's nothing. So let's talk about what's really going on in your brain and why silence isn't just a preference for you, it's a necessity. First, let's get one thing straight. Needing silence doesn't make you uptight, antisocial, or overly sensitive. It makes you human, but with a nervous system that's wired a little differently. And when I say wired differently, I mean it quite literally. Your brain processes sensory information in a way that doesn't filter out noise the same way other people's brains do. Most people have what psychologists call a sensory gate. Think of it like a bouncer at a club. Not every sound, every flicker of light, every tiny sensation gets through. The bouncer decides what's important and what can be ignored. But for some people, that bouncer is a little too lenient. Everything gets through. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant conversation, the tapping of a pen 3 desks over. And your brain has to process all of it, all at once, whether you want to or not. This isn't a flaw, it's a trait. And it's tied to something called sensory processing sensitivity, a concept popularized by psychologist Elaine Aron. People who score high on this trait, often referred to as highly sensitive persons, or HSP, tend to have nervous systems that are more reactive to stimuli. They notice subtleties others miss. They feel things more deeply. And yes, they're more easily overwhelmed by noise, chaos, and sensory overload. Studies using brain imaging have actually shown that highly sensitive people have more activity in areas of the brain associated with awareness, empathy, and processing sensory information. So when you say you can't concentrate because of that dripping faucet, it's not dramatics. Your brain is genuinely working overtime to process something most people wouldn't even consciously register. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Needing silence isn't just about sensitivity, it's also about how your brain manages cognitive load. Let me explain. Your working memory, the part of your brain that holds and manipulates information in the moment, has limited bandwidth. Think of it like the RAM in a computer. When you're trying to focus on a task, write an email, solve a problem, or even just think clearly, you're using up that cognitive bandwidth. Now, if you're also processing background noise, your brain has to dedicate some of that precious mental energy to filtering, interpreting, or simply managing the auditory input. For some people, this happens almost automatically. For you, it doesn't. Every sound is a tiny tax on your mental resources, and when those resources run out, you hit a wall. You can't think, you can't focus, you feel drained. This is why silence feels so restorative. When the noise stops, your brain finally gets a break. It's not having to work double duty. It can dedicate all of its resources to the task at hand, or better yet, to rest and recovery. And this is also why you might feel physically exhausted after spending time in noisy environments, even if you weren't doing anything particularly demanding. Your nervous system was in overdrive the whole time, managing stimuli that others barely noticed. Now, there's another layer to this that's worth exploring, and it has to do with something called introversion and what psychologists refer to as your optimal level of arousal. This is a concept that comes from Hans Eysenck, a psychologist who studied personality and how our brains respond to stimulation. According to his theory, introverts have a naturally higher baseline level of arousal in their nervous systems. They're already operating at a higher level of internal stimulation, so additional external stimulation, like noise, pushes them over the edge into overstimulation. Extroverts, on the other hand, have a lower baseline, so they actually seek out external stimulation to feel engaged and energized. This is why your extroverted friend can work in a coffee shop with music blaring and conversations overlapping and somehow thrive, while you'd feel like your brain is melting. If you need silence, there's a good chance you're someone who's already managing a lot of internal activity. Your thoughts are loud. Your inner world is rich and complex, and adding external noise to that mix is just too much. It's like trying to have a conversation in a room where 10 other conversations are happening at full volume. You can't hear yourself think, literally. But let's talk about the emotional side of this, because needing silence can feel isolating. You might feel misunderstood by people who don't get it. They might call you picky, difficult, or high maintenance. They might tell you to just tune it out, as if that's something you can simply choose to do. Don't fight. And when you can't, when you snap or withdraw or ask for quiet, you might feel guilty, like you're being unreasonable. But here's the truth. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for what you need to function, and that's completely valid. Your nervous system isn't wrong. It's just different. And honoring that difference isn't weakness, it's self-awareness. There's also something deeply beautiful about people who need silence. You tend to be thoughtful, observant, and introspective. You notice things others miss. You process the world with care and attention. You value depth over noise, quality over chaos. These aren't flaws. These are gifts. And the world needs people like you, people who can sit with stillness, who can think deeply, who can create space for reflection in a culture that's constantly screaming for attention. So what do you do with this information? How do you navigate a world that's obsessed with noise when your nervous system craves the opposite? First, you stop apologizing for it. You stop feeling like you're the problem. You're not. You're just wired differently, and that's okay. Second, you create environments that support your needs. Noise-canceling headphones aren't a crutch. They're a tool. A quiet room isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. If you work better in silence, advocate for that. If you need to set boundaries with people about noise levels in shared spaces, do it. You're not being difficult, you're being honest about what helps you thrive. And here's the shift in perspective I want to leave you with. In a world that glorifies busyness, multitasking, and constant stimulation, your need for silence is actually a form of resistance. It's a quiet rebellion against the idea that more is always better, that louder is stronger, that chaos is productivity. You know better. You know that real focus, real creativity, real clarity comes from stillness. And by honoring that, you're not just taking care of yourself. You're modeling something the rest of us need to learn. So the next time someone doesn't understand why you need it quiet, remember this. Your brain isn't broken. It's just tuned to a different frequency. And maybe, just maybe, the world would be a little better off if more people listened to the silence the way you do. If this resonated with you, drop a comment and let me know. And if you want to keep exploring the psychology of what makes you, stick around. There's a lot more to uncover.